Hi, we are stepping into a new time. It is a time of transition. So I want to do a little recap here and help you guys go through this transition. Okay? So when Christ was here, okay, when Jesus was walking on the earth, after he left, okay, he left us his spirit, part of his spirit. And that was the aspect of him that was the teacher. Okay? So while wickedness was still reigning, obviously, you were able to connect to him, to that spiritual kingdom, and you did it from within you by having a love for the truth, seeking the truth. And as you did that and sought that truth, you went through a renewing of your mind. And as you go through that renewing of your mind, it starts changing everything about you from the inside out. He is the true healer. Okay, and that's again what this transition is about. We're leaving one age and we're entering into a new age. And the new age is when righteousness reigns, when loving righteousness reigns, when Christ is reigning. Okay, that's that spirit. He is representative. He is the spirit of God, okay, with man. That perfect divine character of God. That's what will be reigning. So if you have been embracing him, that's what you've been going through, are the transitions into that divine character, which I've talked a lot about. So there are those that have diligently sought and had a love for the truth and were willing to forsake all, okay, no matter where that path of truth led them, that narrow path, they shed everything that was of the world, all right, of the lusts of the flesh, of just all the attachments, the wisdom of the world, and they kept traversing on that path. And by the wisdom and the understanding that they were getting from that internal teacher, they were sanctified, because the truth sanctifies you. They were sanctified, purified, all these things. Okay? Now, when they got to the point that they could then receive the perfect love of God, that's the fullness. Okay? So Christ was here in part of his spirit, that Holy Spirit as the teacher, because we were filthy. Okay, you can't receive the fullness of God when you are corrupted. So you have to be purified, but he's the one to purify you. That's why Christ gave us his spirit. You know, he was here as the teacher. He was here as the healer. And that's what this new age is about. It's about healing. So that's what this transition part is about, is healing. And it's healing from the inside out. Because this world is, we see death everywhere. That's because the spiritual state of this world is death. The spiritual state of the souls within this world, it's death. And most people don't understand, because of the writings and the false doctrines, that hell exists within the souls of mankind. Hades exists within the souls of mankind. It's only a place because everybody is the same, okay? But it's us that hold Hades and death, okay? It's not a separate place, right, that exists. It's not this separate place that somehow we then go to. No, it's just all of the people that are living in death. The death state of their souls creates that hell and Hades. Okay, the bottomless pit is within you, because when you are in death and ruled by evil, that is just a downward spiral. Okay, and I've talked about this in other videos. So Christ came to deliver us from all that. Okay, and it can't be from the outside. And a lot of times in our lack of understanding what people have done, they've made the return of God or the second coming of Christ this kind of magical fantasy type event. All right, we're part of God's creation, and God's going to be working within his creation, and it's coming within. And what he does is he heals us. We're the problem. We're the one with the curse. We're the one creating all this death. We're the one creating torments and torturing each other and hurting each other and harming each other. It's coming from the corrupted soul of mankind. That's what has to be dealt with. That's what Christ came to deal with. Okay, and you can see when he came on the outside, it didn't do anything. People couldn't even hear their words. They couldn't receive them. He had to come within us, and that's what he did when he entered death. Okay, that's why it's so magnificent, and it's a true salvation, because it's a true healing, because he heals you. So instead of having that pit of darkness in you, what you have is a glorious, pure light. So the people that have been diligently seeking after this truth. So after Christ came, you had that internal teacher. Some people have gotten in tune with that teacher. Okay, and these are the firstborn. And what they have done, they have sought, they've had a love for the truth. And they were willing to forsake all, right? Walk that narrow path. And what they were doing is as they were purified by that journey, by the understanding, by the renewing of their mind, they let go of all these things of the world. They become vessels to hold that perfect love. So now the perfect love has been received into them. This means that God's throne has been established in the earth. Okay? God's throne, for God to exist in fullness, that means between two vessels, that's all it takes is two. This is how powerful God is. Okay? He can come in the weakest, smallest way. That's why it's called a mustard seed. And the smallest, weakest way is first us, because we're the one that corrupted. We're the weakest vessels there are. And what he does is he purifies those vessels. As long as there's two, he can purify them. And if they can give and receive perfect love, which you have to be purified to do that, you have to understand what that is. You have to be completely surrendered over to God's will. He has to be creating your reality. He has to be creating every present moment. When you get into that level of sanctification, then God can start coming in his fullness. Okay, because we need him to save us. He saves us. It's his hand. So you have the first part of the teacher that purifies you to the point where you can receive that fullness. And as you receive that fullness, then you start becoming this glorious light. But it only takes two, because at that time, perfect love can be given and received. And in that union is God. He is love. He is a spirit. He isn't some creation. He's beyond creation. Okay? He is spirit. He is all those divine characteristics I was talking about. We can get to know his spirit, but he has no form. He's not bound by a created form. He's beyond that. But that's how he comes in, because it's God the Father that comes in, right? And he's the one that's going to put all the enemies under Christ's feet. Christ is in us. He's the one that's coming in all his power to put his reign here. It's his work, his hand. So it's amazing. And what's also beautiful about this is also God's reunion with himself. You know, the bride of Christ, there's many levels of understanding there, okay? But God was once in creation, in the very beginning, in the Garden of Eden, okay? Because he is perfect love. So when Adam and Eve were there, they had that perfect union between them. But when they went their own way, that was severed. And when that was severed, God could not exist in his fullness in creation, because the perfect love was no longer here. That love was no longer here. Do you see? And he is that love. So now he was disconnected from creation. And that's how evil has its reign here. And that's why Jesus is the beginning and the end. When he goes back and he restores that union of Adam and Eve, that is that perfect love. That's why it only takes two. That's to teach us. It took two to make everything fall. It takes two to bring everything back together. And it's Christ, that spirit that he gave us, when he died, he entered that death realm that enabled the awakening of Adam and Eve to come together and to give and receive that perfect love. That's the throne. Because the moment that that perfect love can be given and received is a spirit between people, okay, and in them. It's a oneness between two people, because when you love perfectly, your realities are totally harmonious. Okay, there is a oneness of there. There is a oneness of flesh now. And what God has joined, no man can separate. God has joined it because God is there. Okay, because that kind of union brings in his presence. And when you only get to that union when you lay everything down and you want him to govern everything. His throne has been established. When his throne is established, okay, then that brings in the refining fire into all of the earth. Because when he is here, every idol falls in his presence. They can't stand in the presence of God. They fall. I'm going to dive into my next video a little bit more.